AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Sarah, 32F. Growing up, we were close, but as we got older, the gap between us widened. Sarah has always been extremely assertive and sometimes manipulative, but I overlooked most of it because I loved her. I have always tried to be supportive, even when her choices made me uncomfortable. However, this past year has tested my patience in ways I didn't think were possible. About a year ago, Sarah started dating Mark, 35M. At first, I tried to be open-minded. He seemed charming in the beginning, funny, articulate, and attentive. But it didn't take long before his behavior raised red flags. He was controlling, and I noticed it right away. Sarah would constantly cancel plans with friends or family at his insistence, and he frequently criticized her choices, often under the guise of helping her be better. At first, I assumed this was just typical relationship dynamics, but his influence started becoming increasingly concerning. One instance that stands out is when Sarah wanted to adopt a small dog. She had been wanting one for years, and it was something that genuinely made her happy. Mark was vehemently opposed. He claimed they didn't have enough time for a dog and that it would ruin the house. Sarah reluctantly gave up on the idea. A few months later, I learned from my parents that Mark had bought a high-end gaming chair and several expensive gadgets, claiming that those were more practical investments than a dog. The hypocrisy was staggering, but Sarah seemed almost proud of the purchases, as if it justified his control. Things only worsened when they got engaged. I tried to discuss some of my concerns with Sarah, gently hinting at how controlling Mark appeared to be. She dismissed my worries, telling me I was being judgmental and that I was too protective. I tried to respect her autonomy because I genuinely wanted her to be happy, but my discomfort didn't go away. The final straw came about 3 months ago. Sarah asked me to help her plan a part of the wedding, specifically the seating arrangements for the reception. When I suggested accommodating some family members who had mobility issues, Mark openly criticized me in front of her. He said I was being unnecessarily difficult and that I should let the adults handle this. Sarah did not defend me. That moment crystallized my feelings. Not only was Mark controlling, but Sarah seemed to have completely aligned herself with him. I realized that attending the wedding would feel like endorsing a relationship I genuinely believe is harmful to my sister. I communicated my feelings to Sarah. I explained that I could not attend the wedding because I do not support her fiancé's behavior, and I do not want to be part of a celebration that, in my view, overlooks the manipulation and control he exhibits. I try to be compassionate in my wording, emphasizing that my decision is out of concern for her well-being, not a desire to hurt her. Her response was immediate and intense. She accused me of being selfish, controlling, and judgmental. She said I was making the day about me, rather than supporting her. She also accused me of ruining the family dynamic and suggested that my parents and other family members were upset with me for not being a team player. I expected some disappointment, but her anger was shocking. After this, I spoke to our parents. They were caught in the middle. They expressed that they didn't want me to boycott the wedding, but also admitted they understood why I felt conflicted. They suggested I find a compromise, like attending the ceremony but skipping the reception or participating minimally. I couldn't reconcile myself with any of these options. The idea of walking down the aisle, exchanging hugs, and pretending everything was fine while knowing what I know about Mark made me feel like I would be betraying my own values and my sense of loyalty to my sister as an individual, not as a fiancé package. The fallout has been tense. Sarah has limited contact with me since then. She occasionally sends passive-aggressive messages on social media or through family members, but she refuses to speak directly. Our parents are trying to mediate, but it's awkward, and I feel like they're subtly pressuring me to forgive and forget for the sake of family harmony. I understand their perspective, but I can't shake the feeling that attending the wedding would be a moral compromise. I know some people might say I'm being overbearing, and I've tried to be honest with myself about that. But I truly believe that Mark is not a good influence on Sarah and that his behavior is manipulative and controlling. I don't want to normalize that by showing up at the wedding, smiling for photos, and pretending everything is okay. I also worry that if I attend, it might signal to Sarah that I accept Mark's treatment of her, which I do not. Friends have given me mixed feedback. Some say I should go for the sake of family peace, while others completely understand why I would refuse. I am prepared for the social consequences, but part of me worries that my refusal will irreparably damage my relationship with my sister, even if she eventually realizes she is in a toxic relationship. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because I don't support her fiancé and his behavior. I don't want to be seen as petty or dramatic, but I also cannot ignore my conscience and the values I hold regarding respect, autonomy, and healthy relationships. I realize this is a long post, but I wanted to be thorough. I'm hoping for an outside perspective. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious. When do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she publicly shamed me over my career choices. This is going to be long, so I appreciate anyone who reads it all. I, 28F, have always been the more unconventional sibling. My younger sister, Claire, 26F, is the type of person who plans every detail of her life years in advance, and she expects everyone else to follow suit. I, on the other hand, have never had a conventional career path. I went to college for graphic design, dropped out, did some freelance work, took a gap year to travel, then eventually started my own small digital art business. I don't make huge amounts of money, but I love what I do. I have some steady clients, and I feel fulfilled. My parents are supportive, but sometimes worry about my instability, which Claire uses as ammunition. Claire has been engaged for about a year, and from the start, she's been planning a very elaborate, Pinterest-worthy wedding. Think multiple color-coded bridesmaids' dresses, a 5-tier cake, live string quartet, the whole 9 yards. Initially, I tried to be involved, but it became clear she wanted everything done her way. She also started making passive-aggressive comments about my job whenever the topic came up. For example, she'd say things like, "Oh, so you're still just doing that? I guess it's okay if you like barely scraping by." My parents have told me to ignore it, but it's hard when it's constantly underlined in family gatherings. The tipping point came about a month ago during a family dinner she hosted to finalize wedding details. I was talking about a recent art commission I'd finished, a piece I'm actually really proud of. Claire interrupted me loudly in front of everyone. She said, "I just don't get how you're okay with doing something so unstable. Don't you want a real job? Like something respectable? I mean, this is what happens when you don't plan your life properly." I tried to laugh it off and say I was happy with my choices, but she kept going. My parents tried to mediate, telling her to be nicer, but she wasn't having it. She even posted a screenshot of our exchange on social media the next day, framing me as the sibling who refuses to adult, tagging a few of our extended family members. I reached my breaking point after that. I realized that no matter what I did, she was going to publicly shame me in some way, and I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of attending her wedding only to be criticized or humiliated in front of guests. I texted her and said I wouldn't be attending. I explained that I supported her marriage and wanted her to have a wonderful day, but I couldn't be around a situation where I knew she would belittle me. She responded angrily, accusing me of being selfish, immature, and jealous of her perfect life. She also claimed I was making her wedding about me, which made me feel like a total villain in the eyes of our family. The fallout has been worse than I expected. My parents are disappointed and stressed, trying to mediate between us. My extended family is divided. Some agree with me and say it's better I don't go if I'll be miserable, while others think I should just put up with it for one day. Claire has refused to speak to me except through angry text messages. She's also made a few posts on social media, subtly shaming me for not attending, implying I'm a bad sister. Part of me feels guilty because I know she's been planning this wedding for years, and my absence is a big deal for her. But another part of me feels like she's been deliberately antagonistic for years, using my career choices and life decisions as a way to make herself feel superior. I'm proud of the life I'm building and the work I do, and I don't think I should have to endure public humiliation to make her happy. My parents have asked me to reconsider and go at least to the ceremony, but I'm worried that it will turn into another public confrontation, and I don't want to be the family drama at her wedding. I've offered to send a gift, help with small things behind the scenes, and even help with her bachelorette party from a distance, but she insists it's either all or nothing. I've been struggling with whether I'm being too sensitive, selfish, or immature. I hate that this has turned into a huge family issue, but I feel like I need to set boundaries to protect myself. I also hate the thought of her thinking I don't care about her happiness, because I do. I just don't want to be demeaned in the process. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she has publicly shamed me and I don't want to be humiliated in front of guests. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancé live in our family home before their wedding and causing a major fight. I, 34F, live in the house I grew up in with my parents. My younger brother, James, 31, has been dating his fiancée, Carla, 29F, for about 3 years. James and I have always been close, and we've had a good relationship with our parents. The house is a bit cramped for adults living together long term, but growing up, it was cozy, and our parents love having family around. James and Carla recently got engaged, and soon after the engagement, they started asking if they could move into the house temporarily while planning their wedding. They argued that it would save money and that they could contribute a little to the household bills. At first, I thought maybe it wasn't a big deal. I didn't expect them to stay indefinitely, and I assumed they'd respect space and privacy. However, things quickly escalated when they started acting as if moving in was a certainty. They casually assumed they would have the biggest room, that they could rearrange furniture, and that their dog could stay despite allergies in the house. They also started leaving their things in shared spaces, eating food without asking, and using our family car for errands. Carla even made comments about how this house would feel better if it were redecorated, which came across as dismissive of my parents and my tastes. I tried to set boundaries politely. I told them that while they were welcome to visit, living in a house before their wedding was not something I was comfortable with. I explained that it would disrupt routines, cause tension with my parents, and it wasn't fair to expect everyone to accommodate a long-term stay. James got upset, saying I was being unreasonable and that I was trying to control their lives. Carla accused me of being selfish and said that family should help each other. The situation came to a head during a family dinner. James and Carla arrived early and started moving some of their boxes into a guest room without asking. I told them firmly that this was not acceptable and that they needed to take their boxes back home. Carla got defensive, saying I was making a mountain out of a molehill and implying that I didn't want them in the house at all. James raised his voice, calling me controlling and saying I was prioritizing comfort over family. My parents were caught in the middle. They said they didn't want to choose sides, but that they understood my concerns. After the confrontation, James and Carla left angrily, and they haven't spoken to me much since. They're staying with friends temporarily, but the tension has spread to family events. Other relatives have started picking sides, some agreeing with my stance, others criticizing me for not supporting their new life together. Holidays are now tense, and my parents are upset because they don't want family gatherings to be ruined. I feel conflicted because I want to be supportive of my brother and future sister-in-law, but I also feel strongly that moving in before their wedding is inappropriate. I wasn't asking them not to visit or not to include family in planning, just not to live in the house before marriage. I offered alternatives like visiting often, staying over a weekend, or renting a nearby place temporarily. They refused all alternatives, insisting that moving in was the only reasonable option. I've thought about compromising, like letting them move in for a week or two under strict rules, but I worry that even a short stay would set a precedent and lead to ongoing conflicts. I also feel that their sense of entitlement is concerning. They assumed our family home was theirs to occupy without discussion. Adding more context, the house has 3 bedrooms, the parents' room, my room, and a guest room. Any permanent stay would require rearranging or taking over someone else's space. Carla has previously expressed that she doesn't like visiting often and prefers living with family, rather than staying over. James has a history of being indecisive and letting Carla make most decisions. My parents are worried about the tension, but understand my concerns, although they wish I had handled it more diplomatically. There's a family tradition of helping each other, but it's always been in moderation. No one has moved in long term before a wedding in our household. I feel like I'm being painted as the villain for setting a reasonable boundary. I want to maintain a positive relationship with my brother and Carla, but I also don't want the family home turned upside down before their wedding. The last thing I want is to have them resent me or create a toxic environment in the house. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée move in before their wedding, even though it has caused a major family rift. I feel like I'm protecting the household and respecting my parents' space, but everyone else seems to think I'm being controlling and unsupportive. The conflict has now made planning for holidays, birthdays, and even casual visits stressful, and I don't know how to repair the relationship without feeling like I'm compromising the home environment. I've considered writing a calm letter explaining my perspective, but I worry it will either not be taken seriously or make things worse. I want to do the right thing without giving in to unreasonable demands. Was I wrong for setting boundaries around living arrangements before the wedding, even though it upset my brother and fiancé and caused a family feud? AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my partner? I have always tried to be the responsible older sibling. My sister, Laura, is 5 years younger than me and has always been a bit dramatic, but I genuinely love her. I have a large house, and I've always hosted family gatherings, holidays, and parties. About 6 months ago, Laura got engaged to her longtime boyfriend, Mark. She was over the moon and immediately started talking about having a wedding at my place. I didn't mind helping, but I assumed she would understand that hosting a wedding is not just a casual event. It requires preparation, money, and a lot of effort. I have a full-time job and a partner, Alex, who I adore and who helps me with everything. I made it clear that if she wanted my help, it would need to be organized and with respect for her space. I thought that was reasonable. At first, everything seemed okay. She came over a few times to discuss decorations, seating arrangements, and catering. I even offered to help her find a decent caterer and photographer. But then things started to get tense. Laura began making comments about how small my house was and how it would be difficult to fit her 100-plus guests. She would complain about my furniture, the layout, and the fact that my backyard wasn't big enough for a dance floor. I tried to be patient, but her tone started to become more demanding and less polite. I reminded her multiple times that this was my house and that I was happy to help, but I couldn't magically transform my space into a luxury event venue. The breaking point came about 2 months ago. Laura had brought Mark over for a planning session, and everything seemed fine until Mark started making sarcastic remarks about Alex. He said that Alex doesn't really have the kind of taste Laura wants for a wedding and made a comment about Alex being boring compared to him. I was furious. Alex is kind, generous, and incredibly supportive, and the idea of someone insulting them in our own home was unacceptable. I calmly asked Mark to stop, but he laughed it off and said it was just a joke. Laura didn't intervene, which hurt even more because I always thought she would defend us. After that, I sat down with Laura privately and explained that I could no longer host the wedding if either of them continued being disrespectful. I said that my house is my sanctuary, and I cannot allow someone to demean my partner or treat me as a servant for their wedding. I even offered to help her find other venues or contribute in other ways, like helping with invitations or decorations. I thought this was fair, but she blew up. She accused me of being selfish, overreacting, and trying to control her wedding. She said I was punishing her for loving someone who disagrees with me, and that I was choosing Alex over family. I tried to explain that it's not about choosing sides. It's about mutual respect. She didn't see it that way. Since then, Laura has cut off most communication with me. She has been posting passive-aggressive messages on social media about family who doesn't support your big day and hinting that I'm jealous of her happiness. My parents are upset with me as well. They told me I should just bite the bullet and host the wedding to avoid family drama. I understand their point, but I feel like they don't grasp how Mark's behavior and Laura's lack of defense for Alex made me feel. I would never let someone insult Alex or me in my home without consequences, and I thought setting that boundary was reasonable. A few friends have told me that I might be overreacting and that I could forgive and forget for the sake of family, but it doesn't feel that simple. The idea of hosting a large wedding with people who have openly insulted my partner and who might disrespect me in my own home is stressful and upsetting. I've offered plenty of compromises, like helping with costs, helping organize at another venue, or assisting with other aspects of the wedding. Laura, however, refuses to consider anything besides having it at my house and keeping Mark's attitude intact. I feel like I'm being punished for standing up for myself and for Alex, and it's causing me a lot of anxiety. Some extended family members have reached out to ask if I will just give in for the sake of peace, and I honestly don't know if doing so would make me feel respected or safe. I also feel guilty because I want my sister to be happy, but I don't want to sacrifice my own well-being and the well-being of my partner just to appease someone who has already shown a lack of respect. I never imagined a family celebration could become such a source of tension and resentment. So, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she and her fiancé insulted my partner in our home. I feel like I've tried to compromise and maintain family ties, but I also feel like I have a right to set boundaries and protect my partner from being disrespected. Some family members are furious with me, saying I'm being unreasonable and that weddings require sacrifice. But I can't shake the feeling that sacrificing my dignity and my relationship isn't a reasonable request. I need an outside perspective because right now it's just my word against theirs, and I'm stuck in the middle of what I thought would be a happy time for everyone. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after what happened last Christmas. So I, 28F, have a sister, Emily, 32F, who's been dating her fiancé, Jason, 34M, for about 3 years. Emily and I have always had a complicated relationship. We were close when we were younger, but as adults, we have very different values and priorities. I live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a city about 2 hours away from where we grew up. I moved here after college and have been building my career and life here, so my space and routines are really important to me. Last Christmas, Emily called me about a month in advance to tell me that she and Jason wanted to spend the holidays at my place. She said they had been traveling a lot and just wanted a quiet Christmas without the stress of hotels or visiting in-laws. I was hesitant, but eventually agreed because I wanted to be accommodating. I made it clear that I have a small apartment and it wouldn't be luxurious, but I could manage. I even offered to cook a few meals and suggested maybe doing a small Christmas dinner together. When they arrived, things started off okay, but very quickly, it became stressful. Jason was loud, demanding, and rude in ways that I hadn't expected. He started moving my furniture around without asking, claiming that he needed more space to feel comfortable. He went into my kitchen and pantry multiple times, taking food and rearranging things. I politely asked him not to touch certain things, especially ingredients I had reserved for personal use. But he kept doing it and laughed it off, saying I was too uptight. The biggest issue happened on Christmas Eve. I had spent the entire day preparing a special dinner, and I asked Jason if he could help set the table. He refused, saying he doesn't do small domestic stuff because it's beneath him. Then, when it was time to eat, he criticized nearly everything I cooked, saying the turkey was dry. Even though I'd brined it for 24 hours, the vegetables were overcooked and the dessert wasn't creative enough. Emily tried to defend me, but she was exhausted from all the traveling and just kind of let it slide. I tried to shrug it off and make light of it, but it hurt. I've hosted many people before, but I had never had someone act so entitled in my own home. After dinner, Jason decided he wanted to watch a movie, but he didn't want to watch the one I had picked for the evening. He grabbed the remote, started arguing over the TV volume, and even took over the living room. I went to my bedroom to get some space, and when I came back, I found him using my laptop to browse videos. He said he was just checking if it could handle a movie without asking. I told him that it's personal and he shouldn't touch it, and he got defensive, saying I was overreacting. It didn't stop there. The next day, he complained about the decorations, saying they made my apartment look cheap. He criticized the Christmas tree I had spent hours decorating, saying it was not aesthetic. Then, he borrowed my car without asking because he needed to run a quick errand. When I told him he couldn't do that, he argued that it was the holiday spirit to share things and that I was too controlling. Emily kept trying to calm things down, but started avoiding the apartment herself, probably sensing how tense I was getting. By the time they left, I was physically and emotionally drained. My apartment was a mess, things had been moved around, and I felt disrespected in my own home. I also felt frustrated because Emily had asked me if they could stay, and I wanted to be a good host, but Jason had completely disregarded my boundaries. A few weeks later, Emily called me. She said she and Jason wanted to visit again this year for Christmas and asked if it would be okay for them to stay in my apartment again. I immediately said no. I explained that after last year, I was uncomfortable with having Jason in my home and that I didn't want to go through the same stress. I emphasized that it's not that I don't want to see Emily, but I would prefer if they stayed at a hotel nearby instead. Emily got very upset. She said I was overreacting and punishing her for something Jason did. She accused me of being selfish and not putting family first. She also said that I should learn to tolerate him because he's her fiancé and I should treat him like family. I tried explaining that tolerating someone doesn't mean letting them disrespect my home and boundaries, but she wouldn't listen. She even hinted that maybe she wouldn't come at all if Jason wasn't welcome. Now, some of my extended family is chiming in, saying that I should compromise and let Jason stay, and that I'm being unreasonable. I feel like I'm being pressured into hosting someone who has no respect for me or my space. I also feel frustrated because it seems like everyone is putting Emily's relationship above my comfort and boundaries. I don't want to damage my relationship with my sister, but I also don't want to invite stress and disrespect into my home again. I'm sticking by my decision and have offered alternatives, like meeting her and Jason for a Christmas lunch or visiting them at a hotel, but she keeps insisting that staying in my apartment is the only option. I'm starting to worry that saying no might permanently hurt our relationship, but I can't imagine inviting him into my home after last year. So, AITA for refusing to let Jason stay in my apartment this year? AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my home and my parenting? I, 34F, have always been close to my sister, Emily, 32F, until recently. Growing up, we were inseparable, sharing everything from clothes to secrets. I got married 8 years ago to my husband, Mark, 36M, and we have 2 kids, Liam, 7M, and Sophie, 4F. We live in a modest suburban home, nothing extravagant, but comfortable, cozy, and filled with love. I take pride in my home and try to make it welcoming and warm, not just for us, but for anyone who visits. Emily has always been the type who likes things flashy. She works in marketing and has a very Instagram-worthy lifestyle. When she got engaged last year to her fiancé, Ryan, 33M, she immediately started talking about the perfect wedding and how she wanted it to be a grand, luxurious event. I was excited for her, but also nervous because I live a smaller, simpler life than Emily, and I wasn't sure how she would react to that if I were involved in her wedding planning. The tension started when Emily asked if we could host the wedding at our house. I was taken aback. Our backyard is decent, with a small patio and a garden, but it is not a wedding venue. I explained to her that while I would love to help, hosting a full wedding at our house wasn't feasible. She insisted she didn't want a traditional venue because she wanted the personal, intimate, family vibe, and said our home would be perfect. I told her again it wasn't practical, mentioning our small space, limited parking, and that our neighbors probably wouldn't appreciate a big event. She brushed it off and started making offhand comments about how cute the house was, but kind of cramped for what she envisioned. I felt a pang of defensiveness because I have put so much effort into making our home comfortable for our family, and it felt like she was belittling it. Emily then pivoted and said she could just renovate our backyard, implying we could temporarily upgrade it with decorations, tents, and outdoor seating to make it more like a venue. I reminded her that hosting a wedding would involve a lot of work, cleaning, catering, managing kids and pets, etc., and that it wasn't just a matter of putting up tents. She sighed dramatically and said I was overreacting, that it would be fun, and that I was too uptight and controlling to let her dream wedding happen in my house. A few weeks later, she came over unannounced while I was cleaning the house. She took one look at the toys scattered across the living room and said, "Wow, this looks like a daycare. Are you seriously expecting people to come here?" I felt my face flush. I explained that yes, we have kids, and yes, we live here, and that our home reflects our life. She rolled her eyes and said, "Maybe you shouldn't have kids if you can't keep your house presentable." I was stunned and hurt. I asked her why she would say something like that, and she laughed it off, saying, "I'm just being honest. I can't imagine anyone wanting to get married here with all this chaos." That was the breaking point for me. I texted her to tell her that I couldn't host her wedding and that I didn't appreciate her comments about my home or my family. She replied angrily, accusing me of being selfish and unsupportive and claiming that I was ruining her once-in-a-lifetime day. She went on to say that if I didn't host, I was showing favoritism toward my husband's family, who had offered to pay for a venue instead. I tried to reason with her, explaining that helping with planning, attending, and even lending money or time was different from hosting a full event in a home that isn't equipped for it. She didn't accept any of that and started posting passive-aggressive messages on social media about family who won't help and people who think their life is more important than mine. A few weeks after that, Emily's fiancé, Ryan, called me. He said he understood my position and didn't want to cause conflict, but he also mentioned that Emily was hurt and felt betrayed. He asked if I could compromise by hosting the rehearsal dinner instead. I explained that our house is actually better suited for a small dinner than a wedding, but Emily rejected that as well, claiming that a rehearsal dinner wasn't grand enough for her vision. I then offered to help in other ways, choosing vendors, helping with decorations at a venue, managing RSVPs, but Emily said none of that mattered. She only wanted me to host. Her constant insistence and judgment of my home and parenting left me feeling hurt and defensive. I told her that if she continued to make personal attacks, I couldn't be involved in the planning at all. Our parents are now caught in the middle. They think I'm overreacting and that family should support each other, but I also feel like my sister crossed the line. The comments about my house being a daycare and my parenting being inadequate were deeply hurtful, and it makes me question whether she respects my boundaries at all. I haven't spoken to Emily in almost a month. She sent me a message calling me selfish, cold, and a terrible sister, saying I am ruining her wedding and our relationship. I haven't replied because I don't know what to say. I feel like I'm standing up for myself and my family, but part of me worries that I'm being overly harsh and that I should try harder to make her happy. On the other hand, I also feel like she has been incredibly unreasonable and disrespectful. So, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my home and my parenting. AITA for refusing to financially support my adult daughter's dream and creating a huge rift in the family. I, 45M, have a daughter, Sophie, 22F, who recently graduated from college. I've always been supportive of her education and personal growth. Throughout her life, I try to give her opportunities that I didn't have growing up, like summer camps, music lessons, and travel experiences. My wife, Laura, 44F, and I have done our best to provide for her while also teaching her responsibility. Sophie has always been independent in some ways, but can also be very idealistic and persistent when she wants something. A few months ago, Sophie came to me with an idea that she described as her life's dream. She wants to start her own ecotourism business abroad, somewhere in Southeast Asia. She has been researching it for over a year, and she insists this is the path she's meant to take. The problem is that she wants me to fund the entire startup cost, which is roughly $70,000. According to her, this would cover flights, accommodations, permits, hiring local staff, and initial marketing. She insists this is an investment in her future and that she will pay me back once the business is profitable. I tried to approach the situation practically. I asked her about a business plan, projected income, legal permits, and risk management. She had a few notes, but nothing concrete, mostly ideas and inspirational quotes for travel blogs. I explained that investing such a large sum without a detailed plan is extremely risky, especially in a foreign country where she has no business experience. Sophie got upset and accused me of not believing in her vision. She said I was putting money over family, and that if I loved her, I would help. Laura and I discussed it and decided we could help in smaller, safer ways. We offered to cover the cost of a short research trip, so she could see the country, meet potential partners, and learn about the local business environment. We also suggested she start small at home, maybe with local ecotourism projects, or try crowdfunding to raise part of the capital herself. Sophie rejected all of these suggestions. She said that without the full $70,000, her dream was impossible and that anything less would be just tinkering. Things escalated when Sophie went to my parents for advice. They sided with her, saying I was holding her back and that parents should always support their children's dreams financially if possible. This caused tension between me and my parents, who I've always had a cordial relationship with. Sophie started hinting to family friends that I was unsupportive and controlling, which has now put pressure on my wife and me from extended family. I tried reasoning with Sophie again, calmly explaining that I want her to succeed, but that funding such a risky venture entirely on my money could have serious consequences for our family. I mentioned that if the business failed, I could lose our savings and we'd have no fallback. She became very emotional, saying I was choosing money over her happiness and that she would rather work menial jobs than live with someone who doesn't believe in her. She has refused any compromise and has stated that she won't speak to me again unless I provide the full funding. I am stuck. I feel like I'm being responsible as a parent by not throwing tens of thousands of dollars into a dream with almost no guarantees. On the other hand, Sophie feels abandoned, and this is straining not only my relationship with her, but also with my wife, my parents, and even close family friends who have been dragged into the argument. I want to support her and her ambitions, but I can't ignore financial reality. Additional context: Sophie has never run a business or managed a large budget independently. She has some experience in travel and hospitality through part-time jobs and internships, but nothing that directly relates to starting an overseas business. I am financially comfortable but not wealthy. Losing $70,000 would seriously affect our long-term plans, including retirement. My wife agrees with me on the financial risk, but also feels torn because she doesn't want Sophie to feel unsupported. The family feud has led to awkward encounters at holidays and social gatherings, with some relatives taking Sophie's side and others mine. I have considered offering a loan with formal agreements, insisting on a detailed business plan, or even partnering with her partially, but Sophie refuses anything less than full funding without conditions. She claims that my oversight and control would stifle her creativity and kill her dream before it begins. So, AITA for refusing to give my adult daughter $70,000 to fund her dream business abroad, even though it has caused a major family feud? I feel like I'm protecting our family's financial security while still offering guidance and smaller ways to pursue her ambitions, but she and some relatives see me as cold and unsupportive. I want to maintain a healthy relationship with my daughter, but I also cannot ignore the risks involved. The constant tension is taking a toll on everyone, and I'm not sure how to navigate supporting her dreams without enabling potential disaster. Was I wrong to draw the line here, even if it hurts my daughter and causes friction with extended family? AITA for confronting my sister over her extreme parenting choices and causing a family rift? I, 32F, have always been very close to my younger sister, Emily, 29F. We grew up in a supportive, though sometimes chaotic, household. Our parents were loving but often inconsistent, so we learned to rely on each other for guidance. Emily got married young, around 25, to her high school sweetheart, and she had 2 kids by the age of 28. I, on the other hand, waited longer to settle down and only recently got married last year. Over the past few years, I've watched Emily's parenting style become more extreme. When her first child was born, she was careful, very involved, and generally reasonable. But after the second child arrived, her methods became increasingly rigid and, in my opinion, harmful. She adopted an ultra-strict, no screen time, no sugar, complete regimented schedule approach that, while well-intentioned, seemed to make her children anxious and withdrawn. I voiced concerns casually in private conversations, suggesting small compromises or encouraging balance, but she always brushed them off, claiming I didn't understand her parenting philosophy. Things escalated when I visited her house last month for a family dinner. I noticed that her kids, ages 5 and 3, were not allowed to engage in any form of creative play unless it fit into a pre-approved schedule. They weren't allowed to watch any educational shows or play with toys that weren't strictly learning-focused. Her youngest was crying quietly because she wanted to watch a cartoon I remembered from my childhood, and Emily had refused. I tried to comfort the child, but Emily immediately snapped at me in front of everyone, saying I was undermining her authority and that I should respect her choices as a parent. Later that evening, after everyone had left, I pulled Emily aside. I told her that her kids seemed stressed, and I was genuinely worried about the emotional toll her methods might be having. I mentioned that children also need freedom, creative outlets, and the chance to make small mistakes without fear of punishment. Emily exploded. She accused me of being judgmental, controlling, and trying to turn her children against her. She said that I had no right to interfere in her parenting and that she had everything under control. I left her house feeling guilty, but also deeply unsettled. Over the next few days, I kept hearing from other family members that Emily was furious and had told our parents that I was being meddlesome and toxic. They said I had overstepped boundaries and created tension during what should have been a joyful visit. Our parents tried to mediate, but Emily refused to speak to me directly. A few days later, Emily posted on social media a long post about the importance of respecting parental authority and not letting outsiders influence parenting decisions. She didn't tag me, but it was clearly aimed at me, as it referenced a family visit and someone undermining her. Many relatives and mutual friends started messaging me, asking if I'd done something wrong and saying Emily was very upset. I felt caught in the middle and frustrated that my genuine concern was being interpreted as an attack. I decided to reach out to Emily one last time via text. I explained that I wasn't trying to control her or make her look bad. I was simply worried about her children's well-being. I emphasized that I would respect her decisions, but couldn't ignore what I saw. She responded coldly, saying that I was manipulative and that our relationship was over if I couldn't respect boundaries. At this point, it's been about 2 weeks since the incident, and our entire family dynamic feels tense. Some relatives support me, saying I was only trying to help, while others are siding with Emily, claiming I overstepped. I haven't spoken to Emily in person since the confrontation, and our parents are caught in the middle, trying to smooth things over without success. I feel conflicted. Part of me thinks I should have stayed quiet, but another part feels that staying silent would have been complicit in something potentially harmful to her children. I genuinely believe that children need a balance between discipline and freedom, and I feel strongly that what I observed was extreme enough to warrant intervention. I've been losing sleep over this, replaying the conversation and wondering if I caused irreparable harm to my relationship with my sister. My husband thinks I did the right thing, but acknowledges that family confrontations are tricky. AITA for speaking up about my sister's parenting, even though it caused a major rift in the family. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for ruining my sister's wedding because I refused to lie about something she asked me to cover up. I have always been close with my sister, Emma. We grew up in a household where keeping up appearances mattered more than anything, and our parents drilled into us the importance of presenting a perfect image to the world. Emma, being the older sibling, was always the golden child, and I often found myself in the background, quietly supporting her achievements while suppressing my own needs and opinions. I never resented her for it because I genuinely loved her and admired her drive, but I always had this underlying tension about honesty and integrity that Emma seemed to bypass whenever it suited her. A few months ago, Emma got engaged to a man named Victor. Victor seemed fine at first, charming, well-dressed, articulate, but the more I interacted with him, the more I noticed little things that didn't sit right. He had a tendency to make offhand comments that were condescending, and there were rumors about how he had treated his previous partners, but Emma brushed all of it off. She was swept up in the excitement of the engagement, and I respected that. The tension began when Emma started planning the wedding. She was very controlling about the guest list, the seating arrangements, and the way the event would appear on social media. I understand wanting a beautiful wedding, but she was becoming obsessive about the image rather than the experience itself. Then came the part that truly tested me. Emma asked me to lie on her behalf about a situation involving Victor's family. Apparently, Victor's cousin, Jake, had been involved in a controversial incident last year, something that made local news. Emma wanted to invite him and his immediate family to the wedding without anyone knowing about it, and she asked me to handle all inquiries from friends and extended family by saying that Victor's cousin had moved abroad and would not be attending. She said it was just a small white lie and that it would prevent awkwardness, but the request immediately made me uncomfortable. I told Emma that I wasn't comfortable lying for her. I explained that while I understood why she wanted to avoid gossip or drama, pretending someone didn't exist was not something I could do, especially when friends or family might have personal stakes or history with Jake. I suggested alternative ways to handle the situation, like addressing it privately with guests or limiting seating to people she was comfortable with. Emma became visibly upset, and she accused me of being dramatic and overthinking things. She said I was putting her wedding at risk and making her look bad in front of Victor's family. The conflict escalated when she started sending me long messages almost daily, pressuring me to reconsider. She reminded me of everything I had done for her over the years, implying that refusing this small request meant I didn't love her or support her. At first, I tried to ignore the pressure, hoping it would pass, but it didn't. Emma even involved our parents, who took her side, claiming that I was making an unnecessary moral stand that would hurt her on the most important day of her life. I tried to explain my point of view to them, but they dismissed it, saying I was being stubborn and selfish. The week before the wedding, Emma sent me a final message pleading with me to lie, saying she would understand if I couldn't, but she needed someone she could trust. I replied firmly that I couldn't lie, and that was the end of our correspondence until the day of the wedding. I was dreading it, knowing that tensions were running high. On the day of the wedding, everything seemed fine initially. The ceremony went smoothly, the decorations were stunning, and the guests were mingling happily. Then, during the reception, someone mentioned Jake's news in conversation with a few other guests, not realizing that Emma intended it to be hidden. People started whispering, and it quickly escalated into awkward questions about why Emma hadn't informed them. Emma noticed immediately and stormed toward me, demanding that I fix this and asking why I hadn't told everyone what she wanted. I calmly said, "Because I didn't lie for you," and walked away. The reaction from Emma and her new husband Victor was immediate and explosive. They both accused me of sabotaging the wedding, ruining the day, and humiliating Emma in front of her guests. Emma cried, Victor yelled, and people around us were shocked. I stood my ground, explaining again that I couldn't participate in deception, especially one that affected so many people. Our parents chimed in, saying I was the problem and needed to apologize for creating a scene. I refused to apologize for the principle of honesty, which only made the situation worse. The fallout was severe. Emma hasn't spoken to me since the wedding. I've tried sending messages explaining my perspective, but she either ignores them or responds with anger and accusations. Our parents are disappointed in me, framing it as a moral failure for not putting Emma's happiness first. Extended family and mutual friends are divided. Some think I was right to refuse lying, while others say I overreacted and ruined a special day over something minor. I keep thinking about what I did and whether I overstepped. I truly did love my sister and wanted her to have a beautiful wedding, but I also felt that lying would compromise my integrity in a way I couldn't ignore. I never imagined it would escalate to such a total fallout. The situation has left me questioning whether some moral principles are worth upholding if they can destroy important relationships. So, AITA for refusing to lie about Victor's cousin and causing a major conflict at my sister's wedding? AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in with me after she caused chaos in my home last year. So I, 32F, live alone in a two-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. I've been living here comfortably for about 5 years, and I really enjoy my independence. I have a decent job as a graphic designer and have a stable routine. My younger sister, Lily, 28F, has always had a bit of a chaotic streak, and honestly, she's struggled with managing her finances and keeping stable living situations for most of her adult life. I've helped her out a lot over the years, loaning her money when she was between jobs, letting her stay with me temporarily a few times when she had no other options. But last year, she stayed with me for almost 3 months, and it became a nightmare. The first month was fine. She kept her room mostly clean, contributed a little to groceries, and was polite. Then things started to unravel. She lost her job and started taking very long naps during the day, claiming she was recharging for her job search, which made my apartment feel like a dorm instead of a home. She would leave dirty dishes in the sink for days, not wash her clothes for weeks, and she started bringing friends over late at night without asking. I tried talking to her about it politely, setting some boundaries, and asking her to respect the shared space, but she always had excuses. Things escalated when she adopted a cat without telling me. I am allergic to cats, and I have severe reactions. I asked her to find a temporary home for it or at least keep it in her room, but she refused, saying it would be too stressful for the cat to leave. This caused me to develop constant sinus issues and severe itching. On top of that, she started borrowing money constantly, often for things she didn't really need. When I reminded her that I couldn't keep giving her money, she accused me of not being a good sister and not supporting her dreams. By the end of the 3rd month, I was emotionally and physically drained, and I asked her to leave. She left, but not without a huge fight, including a night where she called me every name in the book and accused me of being selfish. Fast forward to last week, she texted me asking if she could move back in for a few months. She said she's learned from her past mistakes, she has a plan this time, and she really needs a safe place while she gets back on her feet. She even sent me a list of rules she promised to follow, including paying rent, cleaning regularly, and keeping her cat elsewhere. I told her no. I explained that I remembered the chaos from last year, that I couldn't risk my health or mental well-being again. I reminded her that she had broken my trust, and trust isn't something I can just reset like a switch. I said I still love her, and I want to help her find solutions, but she cannot live with me again. Her reaction was explosive. She called me selfish, heartless, and accused me of punishing her forever for one mistake. She said I was being dramatic and that everyone deserved a second chance. She even threatened to never speak to me again if I didn't let her move back in. My parents are on her side and keep telling me I should forgive and forget, and family comes first. My friends say I'm right to protect my home and well-being. I've been torn because I feel guilty. I know she genuinely wants help, and part of me wants to believe she's changed, but I also remember all the stress, arguments, and health issues she caused last time. I also know that if I let her move in again, I'll likely end up resentful and angry, which would strain our relationship even more. I've offered alternatives, helping her look for a short-term rental, co-signing an apartment if she can afford it, or helping her find a roommate situation, but she refuses everything. She says nothing else is acceptable, and if she doesn't get to live with me, our relationship will be over. I understand family is important, and I don't want to be cruel, but I also feel like setting boundaries is necessary. I've tried being kind and accommodating, but letting her move in again feels like I'd be setting myself up for another disaster. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in, even though she claims she's changed and desperately needs help. AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices at Thanksgiving. AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices during our family Thanksgiving. This might get long, but I'll try to explain everything clearly. I, 34F, have a younger sister, Emily, 30F, who has 2 kids, a 6-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. Our parents are divorced, but they both usually come to Thanksgiving at my house, along with a few cousins and a handful of friends. I host Thanksgiving every year, and I really enjoy it, so I like to have some rules about how things go to keep it manageable, especially with kids running around. This year, I noticed a pattern I hadn't seen before with Emily and her kids, and it honestly stressed me out more than usual. Her parenting style seems to have become more permissive over the last few years, and while I respect everyone has their own approach, some behaviors cross lines in ways that impacted the rest of the family. For example, Emily's kids are allowed to scream and run around inside the house, grab food whenever they want without asking, and ignore requests from adults politely. Normally, I try to let kids be kids, but it felt like there was no boundary at all. I asked Emily nicely multiple times to have her kids settle down or at least play in the other room, but she shrugged it off, saying they're just kids. Let them be happy. The tipping point came when we were serving dinner. Emily's daughter grabbed a slice of pie before anyone had even finished their plates and insisted on eating it standing in the living room. I told her daughter she should wait until everyone had finished eating and that it was polite to sit at the table. Emily immediately jumped in and said, "Don't boss my kid around. She can eat where she wants." At this point, I was frustrated, not just because of the food, but because this seemed to be the fifth or sixth time that day her kids had ignored requests, creating chaos. I told Emily firmly that I needed her to follow the rules of my house. She got defensive and said I was overreacting and that I was trying to control her kids. I responded that it wasn't about control, it was about respect for other people in the house and for shared spaces. The conversation quickly escalated. Emily started yelling, and our parents tried to intervene. My dad said, "We're here to enjoy Thanksgiving. Can we all just calm down?" My mom looked stressed but stayed quiet. After that, Emily left with her kids before dessert. The rest of the family stayed, but the atmosphere was tense. Since then, I've gotten texts from Emily saying I embarrassed her in front of the family and that I shouldn't dictate how she raises her children. She also said that I was so uptight and that my house isn't a dictatorship. I tried to respond calmly, explaining that hosting comes with some expectations and that asking for basic manners was reasonable, but she hasn't replied. I also heard through my mom that my cousins thought I overreacted and made things awkward. Some of them said I should just let kids be kids and that I ruined the holiday vibe. On the other hand, a few family members privately messaged me saying they agreed that Emily's kids were out of control and that I had every right to ask for basic respect for the space and other guests. I'm stuck between thinking I did the right thing and feeling guilty for causing a scene at Thanksgiving. I enjoy having family over and I usually try to avoid conflict, but this felt different. I wasn't attacking Emily personally. I was asking for her to help maintain some basic order during a large gathering in my house. It wasn't just about the pie incident. It was cumulative behavior that made me stressed and worried that someone might get hurt since her kids were running around, sometimes with forks in hand. I also want to mention that I've tried to talk to Emily before, in private, about parenting topics, and she's always very defensive. She tends to take any advice as criticism. I know some people might say I should have let it go, but I've been hosting Thanksgiving for years, and this was the first time I felt completely overwhelmed by someone's lack of cooperation. Since that day, the family dynamic has been awkward. My parents are disappointed that the holiday ended in tension. My cousins seem hesitant to bring up future gatherings, and Emily hasn't been speaking to me directly, though she's still posting on social media, as if nothing happened. I feel torn because I do think I was asking for reasonable things, like asking kids to sit while eating, not scream inside the house, and respect shared space. But I also know I escalated the situation by raising my voice and confronting her in front of everyone. So, AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices at Thanksgiving. Even though it caused a scene and made the rest of the family uncomfortable, I feel like if I hadn't said anything, her kids' behavior would have continued unchecked, and I would have been miserable hosting. But I can't shake the feeling that maybe I crossed a line by addressing it so publicly. AITA for ruining my sister's wedding because I didn't follow the dress code. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Emma, 32F. Growing up, she was the golden child in our family, smart, popular, and everything she did seemed to come with a little spotlight. I, on the other hand, was quieter, more introverted, and often found myself in the background. Despite that, we had a generally good relationship, with normal sisterly disagreements until recently. Emma got engaged last year, and I was genuinely happy for her. Her fiancé, Jason, is a really nice guy, and it was clear how happy she was. The problem started when she announced her wedding plans. She wanted a very specific, formal wedding in a country club ballroom. She sent out the invitations and included a dress code, formal black tie, no exceptions. I've never been a fan of overly formal events. I don't own a lot of fancy dresses, and the thought of wearing a long gown and heels for hours made me anxious. I asked Emma if a nice cocktail dress would be okay. She said, and I quote, "No, I want everyone in black tie. It's very important to me. You're my sister. I know you can manage it." I felt cornered, but I decided to comply. I borrowed a formal gown from a friend and even went for professional hair and makeup. On the morning of the wedding, I woke up feeling anxious and rushed because the dress was tight and uncomfortable, but I brushed it off. The ceremony itself went fine, and I was sitting with my parents, feeling proud of my sister and trying to enjoy the day. The problem began during the reception. Emma's friends and some distant relatives started noticing my dress. Apparently, the borrowed gown I had chosen looked casual to them. They started whispering, pointing, and even a few laughed quietly. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just insecurity on my part. When Emma saw me at the reception, she was visibly upset. She pulled me aside and whispered that my dress was all wrong and that I had completely ignored the dress code. I was shocked. I explained that I had done my best to comply and that the dress I wore was as formal as I could manage. She got louder, saying that it didn't matter what I thought. The dress was inappropriate and that it was embarrassing for her in front of her friends. I tried to apologize, but she didn't want to hear it. The tension escalated when she demanded that I change into a different outfit immediately. I told her I couldn't because we were already at the reception and the only option was my backup casual dress, which was even less formal. She started crying and shouted at me in front of a large group of guests, saying that I had ruined her wedding and that she couldn't believe I would disrespect her like that. At that point, I felt humiliated. I told her that I had tried to respect her wishes, and I couldn't change what I was wearing. The argument turned into a full-blown scene, with other family members trying to intervene. My parents were caught in the middle, pleading with both of us to calm down. Some of Emma's friends whispered to me that they thought I looked fine, but I could see the disappointment on her face and felt powerless. For the rest of the reception, Emma barely spoke to me. She avoided me completely, and even Jason seemed uncomfortable. I tried to enjoy the rest of the evening, but the atmosphere was tense, and I felt like a complete outsider in what was supposed to be a joyful celebration. After the wedding, I reached out to Emma to apologize again, but she responded coldly. She said that I had been selfish and inconsiderate, and that our relationship would need time to heal. My parents are on my side to some extent, saying that Emma was too harsh and that I'd try my best. However, some of our extended family members think I should have gone out and bought a more expensive dress to meet her standards. I've been reflecting a lot since then. Part of me feels like I should have done more to meet the dress code, even if it meant spending a lot of money or going out of my comfort zone. But another part of me feels like her reaction was completely disproportionate, especially considering I made a genuine effort. I can't help but feel that she was more concerned about appearances than about having her sister there and enjoying the day together. A few friends have told me that Emma overreacted and that I did nothing wrong, but I keep replaying the wedding in my head, wondering if I really ruined it. My parents keep asking me to try to reconcile with her, but I don't know if that's possible right now. Every time I think about the wedding, I feel a mix of guilt, embarrassment, and frustration. So Reddit AITA for wearing the dress I wore to my sister's wedding and not meeting her exact expectations? Or was she unreasonable for making me feel like I single-handedly ruined her big day over a dress? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of a family secret? I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 28F. We grew up in a tight-knit family and have shared countless memories, vacations, and holidays together. Our relationship has been mostly positive, with the usual sibling arguments, but we've always been able to work through them. However, things changed dramatically over the past year. and now my family is calling me selfish and dramatic. Emily got engaged last year to a man named Jason, who I had met a handful of times at family gatherings. Jason seemed charming enough, but I had a feeling early on that something about him rubbed me the wrong way. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was a subtle arrogance in the way he spoke to people, especially those he considered beneath him. I kept my thoughts to myself because I didn't want to hurt my sister or seem judgmental. A few months ago, during one of our usual family dinners, my parents casually mentioned that Jason had been involved in some legal trouble a few years back. They were vague and seemed to think it wasn't a big deal, saying it was a youthful mistake and completely behind him. My curiosity got the better of me, and I discreetly did some research online. What I found made my stomach turn. Apparently, Jason had been accused of embezzlement at his previous job, and while the case was technically settled with no conviction, the details were alarming. Several former colleagues came forward on social media, detailing unethical behavior, manipulation, and threats to coworkers. It wasn't a criminal conviction, but it painted a picture of someone willing to hurt others for personal gain. I felt a mix of anger and fear. I didn't want my sister marrying someone who had a history of causing harm to people around him, even if he hadn't technically broken the law. I struggled with whether I should tell Emily. I knew it would sound like I was trying to control her choice or ruin her happiness, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she deserved to know the truth. I decided to speak to my parents first. I wanted them to understand my concerns before I approached Emily, hoping they might support me in having a difficult conversation. When I told them, my parents were surprisingly dismissive. They insisted that Jason had changed, that people deserved a second chance, and that I shouldn't judge him based on rumors or past mistakes. They reminded me that Emily was an adult and could make her own decisions, subtly implying that it was none of my business. I tried to explain that my concern wasn't about controlling her, but about protecting her from someone who might have a dangerous pattern of behavior. They still brushed me off. Feeling frustrated, I decided to talk to Emily. I chose a quiet evening when we were alone at her apartment. I told her what I had found, emphasizing that I wasn't trying to attack Jason personally, but that I had legitimate concerns about his past behavior and patterns that could potentially affect her life. I was careful to be factual and not emotional, but Emily immediately got defensive. She accused me of being judgmental and trying to ruin her happiness. She said I didn't trust her judgment and that she had done her own research and was convinced Jason was trustworthy and had changed. I tried to push back gently, explaining that I wasn't asking her to call off the wedding or break up with him, just to be aware and cautious. Emily ended the conversation abruptly, saying that if I couldn't support her, I shouldn't attend the wedding. That hurt, but I still hoped she would come around or at least agree to keep the conversation open. Fast forward to the wedding planning. Emily was visibly upset every time I brought up any questions about the wedding logistics or the guest list. My concerns about Jason never came up directly, but the tension between us was palpable. Then, 2 weeks before the wedding, Emily texted me, saying that she wanted me to be aware of her decision. She didn't want me at the wedding if I was going to hold on to my concerns about Jason. She said she wanted everyone there to be fully supportive and that my presence would be disruptive. I spent a long time thinking about it. On one hand, I wanted to be there for my sister on her special day. On the other hand, attending would feel like I was condoning a decision I had serious reservations about, and it would probably create an uncomfortable atmosphere for both of us. I also worried that if I attended and voiced my concerns during the wedding, it could ruin the day for her and our family. Ultimately, I decided to decline the invitation. I sent a heartfelt message explaining that I loved her and wanted the best for her, but I couldn't in good conscience celebrate a marriage where I had serious, unresolved concerns about her partner's character. Since then, my family has been divided. My parents are furious, saying I'm overreacting and being dramatic. They insist that I'm causing unnecessary drama and that I'm jeopardizing my relationship with Emily over something that is in the past. My other siblings have mostly stayed silent, though one of them privately told me they understood my concerns but didn't want to get involved. Emily has blocked me on social media and hasn't responded to calls or texts. My aunt and uncle have called me selfish and controlling, insisting that I should put aside my doubts and be supportive, especially on a day that is supposed to celebrate love and family. I feel heartbroken and conflicted. Part of me wonders if I overstepped, but another part of me feels like I did the right thing by staying true to my convictions and protecting myself emotionally. I keep replaying the conversations in my head, wondering if there was a way I could have handled it better, but I genuinely don't see how I could have attended the wedding without compromising my principles and possibly creating a scene. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of concerns about her fiancé's past behavior. My intentions were to protect her and our family from potential harm, not to control her choices. But now I'm being painted as the villain in a story I didn't want to be a part of. I haven't spoken to Emily in over a month, and the silence is deafening. I'm torn between sticking to my boundaries and trying to repair the relationship before it's too late. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my partner. I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emma, 28F, or at least I thought I was. We grew up in a small town, and our parents divorced when we were teenagers. I stayed in the town after college, while Emma moved to a bigger city to pursue her career. Despite the distance, we always kept in touch, and I thought we had a strong bond. Recently, she got engaged to her longtime boyfriend, Jason, 30M, and the wedding planning started. Emma initially asked if I could host a small pre-wedding brunch at my house for her close family and friends. I have a fairly spacious home with a nice backyard, so I agreed, thinking it would be a fun way to celebrate. Things seemed fine until a few weeks ago, when she asked if I would also host the rehearsal dinner. I hesitated because hosting both events would be a lot of work and expense, but she insisted, saying, "It would mean so much to me, and you know how important family is." I reluctantly agreed, thinking it was more important to support her than to make a fuss about logistics. 2 weeks ago, Emma and Jason came over to finalize the guest list and seating arrangements for the rehearsal dinner. That's when the issues began. Emma made a passing comment about my partner, Mark, 34M, who I have been with for 5 years. She said, "I don't know if he's really sophisticated enough for my wedding. You know, some of our family might not be impressed by him." I was taken aback, but tried to brush it off, assuming she didn't mean it seriously. Later that evening, she casually remarked about the decorations I'd chosen, saying, "I hope you don't mind if I change a lot of this because it looks a bit cheap compared to what I had in mind." I was starting to feel a little hurt, but again, I didn't say much because I wanted to avoid conflict. The real breaking point came when she asked me to pay for part of the rehearsal dinner, including the catering and some rentals. I explained that while I was happy to host, I could not cover such a significant portion of the costs. She rolled her eyes and said, "I guess that means you don't really care about me or my wedding." I was frustrated, but I tried to compromise. I offered to help with planning, decorations, and logistics, but I made it clear I could not finance the event. Emma seemed to accept that, but the next day, she sent me a long message criticizing the menu I had suggested for the brunch, the type of flowers I had bought, and even the seating arrangements. She ended the message with, "I guess I shouldn't expect you to really understand how things should look. Maybe I should just take over everything." At that point, I felt completely disrespected. I talked to Mark about it, and he suggested I step back. He reminded me that hosting her wedding events should be a choice, not an obligation, and I agreed. I called Emma and told her that I could not host the rehearsal dinner or the brunch anymore, as I felt she was being unfair and insulting. She immediately got defensive and accused me of being dramatic and ruining her special week. I tried to explain my side calmly, but she refused to listen. Since then, she has been posting passive-aggressive messages on social media, tagging me in things about weddings and family obligations. Our parents are upset too because they think I should just get over it and support Emma, but I feel like I've been disrespected repeatedly. I also want to note that I have always been generous and supportive of my sister. I helped her move to her city, lent her money when she was struggling with rent, and have always celebrated her achievements. But this time, it feels like she is taking advantage of me and my home. I am worried that if I host these events, it will set a precedent where she feels entitled to criticize me and my partner while demanding financial and logistical support. Some friends of mine think I overreacted and that I should just host the events to keep family harmony. Others say I am justified in setting boundaries. I genuinely do not want to ruin my relationship with Emma, but I also cannot handle the stress and disrespect of hosting something that should be a celebration, but has turned into a source of conflict. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding events after she insulted my partner and tried to pressure me into paying for part of the costs. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Rachel, 32F. Growing up, she was the kind of sibling who could be sweet and supportive one day and utterly dismissive the next. Our parents always favored her, which added a lot of tension between us. Despite this, I always try to maintain a civil relationship. I got along with her friends and her previous boyfriends just fine, even when I didn't particularly like them. About 2 years ago, Rachel met someone named Mark, 35M. At first, I thought he seemed nice enough. He was charming, well-dressed, and seemed genuinely interested in Rachel. But over time, I started noticing things that made me uncomfortable. He would make subtle comments about my appearance whenever I visited their apartment. Things like, "You really should try a different hairstyle. It would suit you better," or "You look tired. Maybe you should get more sleep." At first, I brushed it off as awkward attempts at humor, but the comments kept escalating. Then there were the more obvious red flags. Mark would often talk over me in conversations, interrupting me constantly and ignoring anything I said. He also seemed to belittle Rachel in private. I didn't hear all of it, but I noticed how tense she would get after conversations with him, sometimes biting her lip or staring at the floor while he ranted about work or other trivial things. I tried to bring it up to Rachel gently, but she always defended him. She said I was reading too much into things and that he was just playfully teasing. The real breaking point came when Rachel announced that they were engaged. She called me to tell me excitedly, and I tried to sound happy for her. After the call, I went home and thought about it for days. I realized that I couldn't reconcile my knowledge of how Mark treated people, especially Rachel, with celebrating their union. I felt stuck because I didn't want to hurt my sister, but I also couldn't pretend everything was fine. I decided to confront Rachel. I sat her down and explained how I felt about Mark's behavior, emphasizing that I cared about her and didn't want to see her in a relationship where she wasn't fully respected. I told her about the comments he made to me, how he interrupted conversations, and how tense he made her. She became defensive immediately, saying that I was being judgmental and that she loved him, and that was all that mattered. I tried to tell her that love shouldn't excuse constant belittling, but she shut down the conversation. After that, things between us got strained. I tried to reach out occasionally, but she wouldn't respond much beyond polite replies. When she officially invited me to the wedding, I was faced with a difficult decision. I didn't want to be the bad sister by not attending, but I also couldn't bring myself to celebrate someone who I genuinely felt was toxic. I explained my reasons in a long message, emphasizing that it wasn't about her or trying to ruin her day, but about my personal boundaries and my inability to be around Mark without feeling uncomfortable and upset. Rachel's response was explosive. She accused me of trying to control her life and of turning family against her. She said I was choosing my own feelings over her happiness and that I would regret not being there for her on one of the most important days of her life. She even said that if I didn't come, I couldn't expect any kind of close relationship afterward. Our parents also got involved. They called me, trying to convince me to attend, saying it would break Rachel's heart and that I was being unreasonable. I told them that I loved them and Rachel, but I couldn't compromise my mental health and personal boundaries to appease someone I felt was abusive. It's been about 3 months since all of this unfolded. Rachel got married, and from what I've heard, Mark's controlling tendencies have only increased. I haven't spoken to her much, and honestly, I don't know if I will. Some extended family members have expressed disappointment in me, saying I should have gone despite my discomfort because it's family. I feel torn because I genuinely love my sister, but I also feel like attending would have meant condoning her fiancé's behavior and betraying my own sense of self-respect. I haven't spoken much publicly about this because I wanted an honest perspective. I feel guilty sometimes, thinking maybe I overreacted, but I also feel like standing my ground was necessary for my well-being. I'm not trying to control anyone or dictate her choices, but I also can't ignore the warning signs I saw. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. AITA for refusing to invite my cousin to my wedding after years of unresolved family drama. I, 32F, have been with my fiancé, Mark, 34M, for 6 years, and we finally decided to tie the knot last year. We started planning early because we wanted a long engagement to make sure everything was perfect and to accommodate our families, which are both large and a little complicated. My extended family, especially on my mother's side, has always had a history of tension and passive-aggressive interactions, and while I had hoped we could avoid drama at my wedding, it seems that's impossible. My cousin, Lisa, 35F, has been a source of tension for years. To give some background, Lisa and I were very close growing up, but over the past decade, she has developed a pattern of behavior that has made it increasingly difficult for me to interact with her. She has a tendency to manipulate situations to make herself appear as the victim, often at the expense of others. She's also very competitive and, at family events, tends to turn everything into a comparison of her achievements versus mine. This has caused some very uncomfortable incidents at holidays, birthdays, and even casual get-togethers. The tipping point came about 4 years ago. My mother was planning a surprise birthday party for my younger brother, who is 5 years younger than me, and Lisa insisted on helping plan it. Despite multiple requests from my mother and me to follow the plan and respect the element of surprise, Lisa insisted on inviting her own friends and extended the guest list far beyond what was intended. She also leaked details to my brother ahead of time, ruining the surprise. When confronted, she claimed she was just trying to make it better and turned the blame on me, accusing me of being controlling and ungrateful. It was humiliating because it became a family argument, and many relatives took her side despite knowing the truth. Since then, I've tried to maintain a cordial relationship, but she often shows up uninvited to family events or invites herself along with her friends, ignoring my attempts to set boundaries. I have also noticed that whenever I post anything about my life achievements, weddings, or career milestones on social media, she comments in ways that downplay my accomplishments or subtly brag about herself. Mark and I have talked about it extensively, and we both feel that her presence at our wedding would likely cause stress, drama, and potentially ruin the experience we've been trying to create. A few months ago, when we were finalizing the guest list, my mother suggested we invite Lisa. I was honest about my feelings and explained that I did not want her there because of the history of conflict, the likelihood of her trying to upstage the wedding, and her disregard for boundaries. My mother was upset and said I was overreacting, claiming that it's a family event and I should put aside personal grievances. She reminded me that Lisa is family and that not inviting her could cause a rift that might last years. I tried to compromise by offering that Lisa could attend only if she agreed to certain conditions, like not bringing friends, not trying to take attention away from the wedding, and acknowledging that this was a day for me and Mark. I even suggested that she could sit at a separate table if it would make her more comfortable. My mother said this was fair, but when I informed Lisa about the conditions, she reacted angrily, saying they were unreasonable and humiliating. She accused me of holding a grudge and trying to control her, and she refused to attend under any circumstances. After this, my mother called me and was very upset. She said I had broken family rules by not inviting Lisa unconditionally and accused me of being selfish. She brought up past events, claiming that I had held grudges over minor misunderstandings and that I was prioritizing my feelings over family harmony. I tried to explain that this wasn't about minor grievances, but rather about repeated patterns of manipulative and disruptive behavior that have caused serious tension over the years. My mother insisted that Lisa is family and that weddings are meant to include everyone, even if there's been conflict. Mark and I ultimately decided not to invite Lisa. We also made the decision to keep her off the wedding registry, seating chart, and social media announcements to avoid potential confrontations. I informed my immediate family and a few other relatives about this decision, explaining our reasoning. Some were supportive, while others, including my mother and uncle, were clearly unhappy. A few weeks later, Lisa publicly posted on social media about being left out of family celebrations and weddings, without mentioning our wedding specifically, but everyone understood who she was talking about. Several relatives called me to ask if it was true and to express concern. I stuck to my decision and reiterated that this was not personal retaliation, but a matter of protecting the atmosphere of the wedding and respecting the boundaries Mark and I need for our big day. I now have relatives expressing frustration and guilt-tripping me, and my mother has hinted that she may not attend the wedding if Lisa isn't invited. This has put me in a very difficult position. I feel that I am trying to protect my mental health, my relationship with Mark, and the experience of our guests, but I'm also aware that family relationships are being strained as a result. I'm posting here because I'm conflicted. On one hand, I feel completely justified in protecting my wedding day and avoiding predictable drama. On the other hand, I'm worried about the long-term consequences of not inviting Lisa, especially if my mother decides to boycott or if other relatives take sides. I want my wedding to be a joyful, celebratory event without unnecessary conflict, but I also don't want to be seen as cruel or selfish for excluding family. AITA for refusing to invite my cousin after years of unresolved family issues, even though it has caused tension with my mother and other relatives. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.